Hi everyone, I'm Corey Weathers. I am a military spouse. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the states of Georgia and Colorado, and I was last year's 2015 Armed Forces Insurance Military Spouse of the Year. I'm going to take a moment during this video and share with you the real struggle that exists for military spouses, especially those who are trying to maintain their careers through their certifications and licensure. Joining forces has been doing a huge push to get states on board with accepting military spouses applications quickly and at least be aware of the fact that military spouses struggle with this and we need a way to keep working. But I don't want people to mistake the fact that just because 50 states signed up to support and say that they're going to support military spouses with helping with this problem doesn't mean that it's actually happening in a way that makes a difference. And so I'm not here to say that I need to be entitled to get something that nobody else gets. It's merely pointing out that there is an issue with states communicating to each other. Just find a way to streamline this. And it doesn't have to be so hard. So here's the deal. Before we came into the military, I was already getting my license from the state of Georgia. Kentucky had a different standard for supervision as far as the number of years of supervision and the kind of supervision. So I was already wrestling with the state of Georgia and having to go back and get additional supervision from a supervisor who had less education than my previous supervisor because they just had a different idea of what supervision looked like. We received orders to go to Colorado. The problem is that when you go to another state, in order to work on those standards that you need to work on, you have to have a job. In order for me to get supervision from somebody, I need to have a job seeing clients so that I have something to talk to that supervisor about. The problem is, in Colorado, I can't see clients if I don't have a Colorado license. So now I have to apply for a Colorado license. Back in 2009, it took 9 months for my file to sit on someone's desk before they would open it, read it, and decide whether or not I qualified for a license. They finally issued me a license. The problem was we were going to move in 6 months. I got stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia. And by then, I was finishing the requirements for my Georgia license. I got to Fort Stewart, I got a job. I'll say that even that was hard because trying to get on insurance panels such as TRICARE to work with military families or any other insurance panel, when I turned in my resume, they wanted me to go back and explain why I had gaps in my employment. Why did I not work for a certain period of time in Colorado? And I had to explain that. And of course, my only answer is I'm a military spouse. And then we received orders to go to Fort Gordon in Augusta, Georgia. Again, huge blessing for me to stay in Georgia where I could continue to work. But we were only there for a year and a half. And it was time for us to go to South Carolina for a 5-month school for my husband. Now this brings me to last year. Last year, I moved twice. There was no point in me getting another license in the state of South Carolina so that I could work for 6 months. But now I have another gap in my employment history, and I have to explain that to people on a regular basis. Now, I am in the state of Virginia now, and I have an even bigger problem because I'm trying to maintain my Georgia license that requires a certain number of continuing education. Now, keep in mind, every 2 years, I have to pay $100 to $150 each for my licenses to keep them up. Not to mention however much money it costs for me to keep up my continuing education. The best way to find the continuing education in your state is to join an association of other professionals like you who are putting on those workshops, who are keeping up with the standards in that state. And by the way, that's another $100 and $150 to join those associations in each state when I'm not even working and I don't have a job to pay for those things. I don't know if you know about this, but face-to-face workshops giving you continuing education are extremely expensive. I can't afford something like that, and neither can other military spouses who don't have a job, who don't have a license to work in that state. Fortunately, I can get a lot of my continuing education online, and it's all education to serve military families very cheaply, sometimes for free. But if that state won't approve of me getting continuing education online, it all has to be face-to-face, then I'm running into a big problem and I'm having to fork out a lot of money, professional money that may not come very easily if I'm a single income family. So here I am in Virginia and I've decided I'm going to switch to my license from Georgia to Virginia. Why? Not because I plan on staying here for a really long time, but I'm switching it because Georgia's standards for continuing education are so hard to keep up with. They have great reasons for those continuing education standards. Unfortunately, it makes it extremely challenging for me to meet those standards like I just described. In Virginia, they don't really seem to at least care or have listed in their rules where I get those CEUs, except for maybe ethics need to be face-to-face, and that's only 3 hours. So I said, hey, I'm in Virginia. I might want to work in Virginia. And because their standards seem a little bit more flexible for me to work on. So I'm going to walk you through what this application for Virginia asks of me. The first question they ask is, are you a military spouse? Yay, Virginia. Now, this is what Joining Forces has been working on. The great thing is that these states are saying we will expedite military spouses in their applications so that they can get a temporary license, or they can get their license quickly and get to work quickly. And if they don't meet our standards, then we'll give them a temporary license so they can get started working while they meet the standards. That solves the problem that I had back in Colorado and in Georgia. The problem is I don't want a temporary license. I have 15 years of experience doing something that I love to do. And at almost 40 now, I'm starting to feel like I'm pretty good at what it is that I do. And I don't want a temporary license because I don't know how that's going to look to an employer to give me a temporary license. And if I have to meet your standards, what does that mean? If my supervision in Georgia doesn't look the same as your supervision standards in Virginia, then that means what? I need to go now pay $100 an hour to a supervisor to give me more supervision after 15 years of experience of doing a job, and pay them $100 an hour, and I'm not getting the income. Why am I working? That's the same as when we go out and work and then we're really only just paying for childcare to work. So why would I want a temporary license when I'm going to have to shell out more money to meet your standards? So yay for Joining Forces for helping us expedite our applications, but it's not the end of the problem. So they give me a form that I'm supposed to send to Georgia and to Colorado that verifies that I have an active, good standing license in those states. So I contact Colorado and I send them this form, and I get an email back that says we don't do verifications of licenses anymore because anybody can get on the website, look up your name, and verify that you have an active license. I think that's a great idea. I don't think that I need a form to verify a license when any person, any civilian or entity can go verify and look it up that I have an active license. So yay, Colorado, that's a great idea. It's free, it's quick, it's easy, not a big deal. So I send the same form to Georgia. Email from Georgia says I have to pay Georgia $25 for them to sign this piece of paper and send it back to me and tell the state of Virginia that I have a license there. So I was a little bit upset at that because Colorado is doing it for free. Why should I have to pay Georgia $25 when I'm already paying, by the way, $140 to submit this application to Virginia, of which they may say, you know what, you don't meet our standards, so it's not a refundable application fee. The next form that I have to fill out is verification of clinical practice. So what Virginia wants is for me to prove that in the last 5 years, have I done at least 2 years of clinical practice. Here's the problem that I have for that. I am one of the lucky few people that just might barely be able to squeeze 2 years out of the last 5 years that I can prove that I was actually in a practice doing counseling within a group practice. And that's because I was lucky enough to be in Georgia twice for 2 different assignments. Doesn't count any of the volunteer work that I've done or the volunteer, what could be considered clinical experience. And this is a whole other topic of how do we use our volunteer stuff, because there's a lot of states that are now saying it has to be paid work too. And again, you can't get a job to get paid if you don't have a license in that state. So then the next section is asking for my education. I totally understand that. Every state wants to make sure that you meet core standards. The problem is that 15, 20 years ago in my education, there may be some core classes that they've added that weren't really that important 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So a lot of our spouses are going to run into that problem when they now have to fill it out for a new state and standards have changed. The last part of this form asks me to verify that my internship when I was in school 15 years ago, how many hours I worked at that internship. And now I have to send this form back to a professor and have them sign a piece of paper that says that I did an internship for so many hours. rather than me being able to just submit a resume or do something else to show that. Here's the deal. I'm frustrated. And do I have to work? Probably not. Not really. We can live great off of my husband's income. But I also feel like I have a calling. I've always loved to do counseling, and I'd like the right to be able to have a career. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm not asking for people to do something for me that they wouldn't do for other people. I'm asking for states to communicate to each other. I'm asking for one license, one national license, one standard, and to grandfather some of us in who have been doing this for years and years. When I was at these group practices as a military spouse clinician, I had a waiting list of military families that wanted to see me. Yet, I have to go and prove myself to every state and every insurance panel why they should approve of me to do counseling. This is way too much chaos. For military spouses who have these professions, it can be a whole lot more simple than this. All we have to do is recognize that it's a struggle and make it easier. Streamline the process. And if you are going to make big changes like K-CREP and changes of what core classes and education and standards and all of that stuff, then you better be ready to grandfather some of us in. So end of rant. I hope some of you have been validated by this experience. I hope some of you will share it because we need a much better plan than this. And I'm tired of quietly struggling and quietly being frustrated. And I hope Michelle Obama sees this and sees that, yay, thank you for the 50 state support. That's a huge step, but it's not enough.